Welcome back to Athletic Conceptual Training, where we unpack the mindset, mission, and mastery behind elite performance in and out of the arena. I'm your host, Ryan Johnson, and today's guest is someone I've been looking forward to speaking with for a long time. Today, we welcome a true leader, disruptor, and advocate in veterinary medicine, Suzanne Thomas. Suzanne is a dual licensed veterinary technician in both New York and New Jersey, a NASM certified personal trainer, and a senior operations manager responsible for multi-site leadership across several general practice hospitals. With over 17 years in veterinary medicine and nearly a decade in leadership, she's worked in emergency, oncology, ICU, internal medicine, and now builds a thriving team through culture, mentorship, and value-driven leadership. What sets her apart isn't just her resume, it's her relentless voice for technician empowerment, her commitment to mental health and medicine, and her courage to challenge toxic norms that have held back too many veterinary professionals for too long. She's one of the few people blending the world of movement, medicine, and management. And today, we're diving into all of it. Suzanne Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was very kind.
Do it right, you know?
Absolutely. I'm privileged and excited to be here. We've been trying to get this happening for a while, so I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah. Well, let's get right into it.
Yeah.
Let's rewind the clock. What was the moment you knew you were meant to lead in this space, not just work in it?
Yeah. So before I actually even stepped into vet med, I led multi-site retail locations. I was working for a company that was incredibly philanthropic. And when that company closed, I swore to myself that I would never, ever, ever get into management again. I was like, not a chance, done. That role burned me out so badly that I equated leadership with total and utter exhaustion. So, I mean, in hindsight, I do realize now that it wasn't the leadership that was breaking me down. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. My husband's calling me. Hold on a second.
Okay.
So in hindsight, I realized that it wasn't the leadership itself that was breaking me down. It wasn't the retail or the management that was breaking me down. It was the environment that I was in, that the values that I was working within, right? That wasn't aligning. I was young. I didn't fully understand that it was the way that you lead and the culture that you build that matters just as much as the work itself. So fast forward to my time in vet med, I started actually as an assistant, later then becoming the technician. And it became really, really obvious to me as I was working in these clinics that leadership here is often really misguided. I saw incredibly skilled technicians and doctors being thrown into leadership roles without any training, right? And I'm sure that's the story that a lot of us know, right? It's the technician that's really, really great technician that is promoted into a management role because they were a really great technician. So here you go, be the manager. And then you have these doctors, right, who have very, very little leadership or business education trying to run the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
But it's missing such an important piece, the people, right? And so when my life finally aligned and I had a chance to step back into a leadership role, I knew it was the right move for me. And I realized that I could make a bigger impact on the pets by making a bigger impact on the people who care for the pets. And then over time, that mission just grew and continues to grow. And now I focus on impacting the people who impact the people who care for the pets.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And it kind of speaks to the overall, I guess, unspoken sentiment of trial by fire. in
Yeah.
the veterinary profession.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You're a NASM CPT and a veterinary leader. What parallels do you see between the gym floor and the surgical suite?
So I think initially people might think the word precision. I think that's the first word that came to my mind when I thought about the parallels between fitness and vet med, but it's more about practice and dedication to your craft for me. In
Yeah,
fitness, you just walk into a gym once and expect to leave with a perfectly sculpted body, right? The first
right,
time I walked into a gym, I didn't have biceps, right? It's taken
right.
years and years of constant work to be strong. I was recently asked what my 1 rep max is, and I'm like, it sounds impressive, but it's all that work that gets up there. Like
Yep.
it takes a lot of work to get there. So
Yeah,
I can tell you that number, but there's a lot missing
yeah,
there. And if I'll share it with you if you really want to know. And that might be like, oh, that's super impressive. But what's really impressive is all the work that all the days, all the times that I didn't want to get up that I got up to get there. Right. And I think that vet med and leadership in vet med are very similar, right?
hmm
You're gonna
hmm
mess up. You're gonna try things that don't work, but if you keep showing up, you stay consistent, you keep refining your approach, you build the strength, the skill, and the resilience, right? You'll eventually lead well.
yeah,
I didn't wake up one day and all of a sudden I was a great leader. It took a lot of screwing up,
yeah,
building that bicep by curls and curls and curls, right? To
yep.
be the leader I am today. And I'm sure in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, I'll look back and be like, she was crazy. Look at how I am now, you know?
Yeah, I love that example because for me that when I was talking about blending sports and vet med together, it made perfect sense to me because it was that sentiment that you shared where it's more about the dedication, you know,
Yeah.
and dedication for me started on the field, which then helped me in the veterinary profession.
Yeah. You don't wake up one day and then just have it. It takes time.
Yeah. Would you say that 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 is something that's missing in the vet industry, or that the vet industry could learn from sports?
Yeah, I think that the parallels aren't really they're not so much the parallels for me in it's less about the the parallels from sports, right? It's a little bit different from sports to personal training, right? Because personal
Okay,
training is a singular
sure.
person versus a sports team.
Hmm.
The team tends to have like pretty rigid roles, but it's still a overall team similar to a hospital team. I
Yeah,
think it depends on how you're really looking at it. Ultimately, they're all about personal dedication and growth in bodybuilding or lifting or even just one-on-one personal training. It's you showing up for yourself day after day. In leadership, it's similar. It's me showing up in leadership learning. It's me showing up day after day, learning how to do it better.
yeah,
But it's, you know, as a team, it's a larger, bigger thing. So as a trainer, I often pull from my experience, actually group coaching. So I taught group fitness, and that's about guiding different people towards a shared goal, right?
mm,
Similar to vet med, and so in both fitness and in vet med, it really all comes down to behavior. How do we get people to do more of what we want them to do? We find out what drives them. We find out what matters to them. In vet med, it's often patient care. How do we help more people stay with their pets? How do we help more pets get healthier by removing the barriers to care. In fitness, it's how do we help more people, remove barriers to exercise or get them more access to food. Different fields, same idea. It's removing those roadblocks, connecting the work that we're doing to what people value, and then you see performance improve, whether it's the performance on the clinic floor or performance on the court.
Yeah. You've spoken boldly about leadership breakdowns in vet med. What's a toxic norm we continue to accept that you believe needs to be dismantled immediately?
I think that something that needs to be dismantled immediately is this belief that it's normal or even expected that we have to keep working no matter what, that the work never stops. It's this, it kind of goes into this idea of work-life balance. I haven't really put words to it. I don't necessarily believe in, I think that's a little catchy and cliche, but I do think that we need to learn boundaries. I think that sending 10 p.m. emails, it doesn't have to be just part of the job. It doesn't need to be the expectation. I think that we schedule our teams, especially in general practice, let's say until 5 p.m. But we all know that it's expected that we stay till 6 or 7 or until the last patient leaves. We just keep seeing them, right? Because that's just the way that it is. I'll never forget when I was 14 or 15 years old and I worked at a bagel place and I cut my thumb really, really badly. My mom picked me up and we went to urgent care and it was 3:01 p.m. on a Saturday. They closed at 3. They locked the doors and they peeped out and they said to my mom, if you're worried, bring her to the ER. And listen, we were not happy about it at all. Absolutely not. Could they have easily just taken me in, bandaged me up, and been done with it? Absolutely. But they had a hard stop, and they honored their closing time, right? And this was a really long time ago. In vet med, we don't do this. We've normalized burnout over boundaries. There's such a focus on making sure that Fluffy's mom gets what she needs, and we avoid the uncomfortable conversations. Right? We push our teams past the limits that are healthy and safe for them because we don't know how to say no. And then ultimately we burn ourselves out. We don't protect our boundaries. We don't protect our people, which ultimately leads to not allowing us to provide better care in the long run. We're not looking at the long term. So what needs to stop right now is that burnout is the norm. It's a very long-winded answer, but I mean, stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. There's this feeling that you can do more. And there's even, I would say managers who perpetuate that, to reach their revenue goals and their things like that. I mean, I guess I would take it a step further and say, especially as a culture, it's looked down upon to say no.
Yeah, saying no is hard for all of us. Yeah, for sure. But I think we need to learn how to say no. And I wonder sometimes if we don't say no because of this bleeding heart mentality, right? We don't want to say no because of that whole well, where's Fluffy's mom gonna go? Is that really our problem? And maybe I'm wrong to think that, but there has to be some place where we can think about ourselves.
I definitely, I agree. definitely an uphill battle because I feel like, and you tell me what you think about this, I feel like saying no is masked as bad patient care because you're not willing to go the extra mile or because you're not willing to push your boundaries.
But is it worse patient care long term if we burn ourselves out completely all the time and we're not there long term? If we're completely burnt out, we have to close.
Yeah.
Who gets affected long term? Is it fluffy today, or is it every fluffy for years to come? I think it's just a bigger question. And I think that we're not thinking bigger picture. I think we're thinking in the moment. And is my answer the right answer? I don't know. But I do think that if we don't protect ourselves and if we don't have boundaries and if we don't have systems in place that allow us to be able to stop and protect ourselves, then we won't be here. We won't have teams. We won't have clinics to help the pets in the long run.
Yeah. I think this is a good segue into the next question.
I agree.
Technician utilization has become a buzzword. Mm-hmm. In your view, what does real utilization look like, and who's truly walking the talk?
So for me, real utilization means that credentialed technicians are working to the full scope of their training, mm-hmm. meaning anesthesia, dentistry, advanced nursing care, client education, all the things, right? Not just restraint, not just cleaning the kennels, not just running for supplies while the doctor does the nursing care. Mm-hmm. It's not just assigning those tasks to a person. It's about trusting them to lead in their areas of expertise, building the schedules, the workflows, the expectations around that trust. It's about allowing people to work at the top of their skill set. Now, I know we talk about, and even this question really started as technician utilization, but I think it's important to just note that we should be using every team member at the top of their skill set, not just techs, right? The assistant should be used at the top of their skill set, whatever is allowed in their state, right? The CSR, the receptionist, top of their skill set. And that means if it is their first day, their skill set's down here. We need to equip them with the skills and the knowledge to get their skills up here. Don't expect them to be up here on day one, right? So we equip them with what they need to be up here, to whatever that is, whatever their role is, and then let them free, trust them to do their job instead of hovering and micromanaging and doing it for them. The leader that does everybody's job is not leading. I've gone on a tangent. But as far as who's truly walking the talk, it's hard to name that on a grand scale. The organizations that I see that are excelling are the ones that are putting their money where their mouth is. There's some companies that are not just offering scholarships to tech programs, and most of the larger organizations do that, but there are some that have internal assessment and development programs. They have in-house training. They send technicians and assistants and doctors and every team member to training, or they pay for training. They have CE allowances for all different roles, not just doctors. Growth opportunities for all team members. Honestly, the next step, in my opinion, I know you didn't ask this, but I'm going to give it to you anyway, is opening more leadership pathways. Told you that the real reason why I got back into management was because of all of the managers that I saw that were just thrown into the role. Well, give people that actually have the skills and the will more pathways to get into management, beyond just that middle regional level for vet techs, for assistants, for CSRs. Give us more pathways to go up. To my knowledge, there's only 2 people that are technicians that are in a chief veterinary nursing role in all of vet med. There could be more, but there's only 2 that I actually know of, because they did actually try to find out who they were. And maybe 1 or 2 COOs of companies that actually come from vet med. 1 that I know of that's a credentialed technician. We need more of these top tier opportunities. So technicians, so assistants, so CSR, so people other than doctors have growth paths that go beyond just being a technician. Not that just a technician is bad, but being able to see something beyond $20, $30 an hour, something beyond what I've been seeing all over social media just today, is a dead end career that breaks my heart. Let's give our teams something else that they can work towards if that's what they want.
I couldn't agree more. I think it definitely, as someone who has started something outside of, my on the floor skill set, to do just that, seek better opportunities. I think if that opportunity was presented and was there and was a pathway, I wouldn't need to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I can imagine how many others feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel really strongly about it today, and I'm glad you
Have you
asked me
ever
that
been-
question, because I literally saw so many posts today about it that I was like, ah.
Yeah, it's really tough to know that there's only a limit to where you could go. And when we talk about retention and growth opportunities and things like that, people need to know that they can continue to rise. That's how you retain good folks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree 100%. Have you been in a leadership room and felt like the only one calling out the truth? Have you held your ground without burning out?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'll be honest, I have ADHD. I'm pretty open about that. So I actually, something about people with ADHD, not everyone, because it's a spectrum, but people with ADHD tend to have a really strong sense of justice sensitivity. And what that really means is that when I feel injustice, it is very hard for me not to speak up. And so one of the most valuable things that I have learned is how to speak the language of the people in the room that I'm in. That means really figuring out what matters most to them, whether that's client experience or patient outcomes or financial health. It really depends on who I'm talking to, right? So I try to tie it back to what I'm saying to those people, what their priorities are, and then the bigger mission. That way, it's not just Suzanne's opinion. It's a call to protect the things that they care about in the bigger picture. And I learned to network really early and often, both inside and outside the place that I work. For anyone who doesn't know, I do work in a corporation. I have my entire career. And so it's afforded me pretty well to make sure that I network through all different departments. I work in operations, but it's been very important to network throughout every department, because you just never know what you're going to need and what you can offer them, what they can offer you. It's always been really important to be able to help each other. And like I said before, people are at the heart of everything that we do. So if I'm feeling that something is fundamentally wrong, chances are there's probably someone else that does too. So building those relationships ahead of time has really helped me feel not only that I'm not alone in speaking up, but it's helped to help focus on those higher impact issues without like burning out every candle at every end, right? And it's also helped me kind of focus on which fights to fight, which hills to quote unquote die on, and remember how each thing kind of fits into the greater mission. I also only ever work for organizations that I feel I align with, and when I don't align with them, it's very hard for me to stay. So yeah.
Speaking of working at a corporation, when do policies and systems become more harmful than helpful in veterinary medicine? And who's responsible for changing that?
I think that something that I say a lot, and I say it a lot because I believe in it, is that when you know better, we have a responsibility to do better.
Yeah.
The problem is that we often fall into the trap of that's the way that it's always been, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be in the clinic or otherwise. I've heard it in pretty much every level of meeting I've been in, and I've been in every level of meeting, from the general, like, I'm a technician and I'm in a hospital meeting, to a board meeting. I've been in every level of meeting. And I've heard that kind of theme throughout. Well, that's just the way that we do it here, right? That whole kind of idea.
Right.
And that trap, is all well and good until we're shown another way. When I was a technician and I worked in oncology primarily. I worked with one oncologist for the majority of my career in oncology. And then we moved to a different hospital where there were other oncologists, and I wound up working with a different oncologist one day. And I learned that there was a different way to treat lymphoma that I hadn't seen before. And I was like, this is interesting. And I went back to my original oncologist and was like, is this okay? And she was like, yeah, there's different ways to treat. It's just the way that he treats. And he was taught a little bit differently. And it just opened my eyes. And I was like, oh, we can do different things. It's just like, when you know better, And then there was a day where he asked me, he said, hey, Suzanne, can you aspirate this mask for me? And I was like, what? He was like, well, you know how to do that, right? And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, I've watched her do it 100,000 times, but I didn't know that was something that I could do. And he was like, you're a licensed technician, right? And I was like, yeah, right. And it was this like mind-blowing moment where I was allowed to do something that was totally within my scope, but I didn't realize at the time, because it was a super young tech, that was within my scope, because my doctor had always done it.
Yeah.
I didn't know, right? And so these are really early moments in my tech career that kind of lead me into the way that I lead now. Is when we know better, we have a responsibility to do better, right? These moments are eye-opening because they show me this opportunity that we miss, that we assume that the old way is the only way, right? I think that the responsibility for fixing these harmful things, those are not really necessarily harmful things, but they can be harmful when they turn into policies and systems that become harmful. The responsibility to fixing those are it's not just on the corporate leadership or the medical director or the hospital owner. It's really on every level of leadership. It's on every person, from the executive to the exam room to every person in the hospital, to ask, is this, whatever this is this still serving our patients? Is this still serving our clients? Is what we are doing today still okay? Is this still moving us in the direction that we want to move in? And if the answer is no, then the follow-up needs to be, so how can we make it better? What do we need to do to change that? Instead of being so scared of change and so scared of what those next steps are, start asking questions. What are other people doing? Start asking the people around us, what are you doing? What What do you do instead of this? Maybe you have a different way that is better, and try it.
Right. I love that. Do you think certification creep, requiring more letters, more credentials, is helping or hurting the growth?
So if you follow me on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
I might not be the best person to answer this subjectively because I have quite a few letters after my name.
Okay.
I value education really deeply. But for me, at the very least, I think when we're talking veterinary technicians, I think having a standard credential across all of the states would be very helpful. I am not here to argue what that credential is. I'm not here to argue whether it is, we're called technicians versus nurses. I prefer to have a name.
Yeah.
Just call me something, right? And then I'll leave it at that, right? But for me, having a standard credential across all of the states would be helpful because selfishly, it gives me a benchmark of knowledge. Here's why. If I go to a clinic in New Jersey, and I'm going to use the Northeast because that's where I live, but if I go to a clinic in New Jersey, there's no requirement to be credentialed to work as a technician. That means that I have absolutely no way of knowing someone's skill level or knowledge base. Compare that to walking into a clinic literally one state over in New York, where the licensing is required to have the title veterinary technician. And as long as that clinic is following that state requirement, I can reasonably assume that someone with that title has a baseline knowledge, the same one that I do because I took the same tests that they did, right?
Yeah.
There's at least a standard that I can assume that I can have a level that I understand.
Right.
Without that standard, I'm relying entirely on the training that the person that received this training received it from the best doctor that they've ever worked with. And listen, let's be honest. Have you ever met a doctor who has been formally trained in how to teach nursing skills? I haven't. And if you have, great. Let's formalize that and put them everywhere, because I don't know what school of veterinary medicine teaches doctors how to be technicians. If they did, then we wouldn't have tech school, right? So I recognize, though, also, it's just important for me to say this, that not everybody has had the same opportunities that I've had. If we raise the credential requirements without improving access, pay, or utilization, right, we do risk locking out the talented people, especially those from underrepresented communities and underrepresented areas, before they even have a chance to get in the door. I totally understand that, and I recognize that. So I want to make sure that that's clear and not forgotten. I don't want to be that person that ignores that piece. But that's why I love the work that people like Dr. Nicole Bruno are doing with Blend Vet and the Pathway events, and Alexander Contreras is doing in Miami-Dade County, bringing veterinary medicine into schools and communities so that kids in underserved areas know that these careers exist, know that we have a path forward for them. Credentialing can be a powerful tool, right? But only if we pair it with real pathways to support everyone.
Right.
So that's my soapbox.
Okay. So what would a veterinary culture built by Suzanne Thomas actually look like from day one?
So I think if you've ever worked with me, you know what this looks like. It's rooted in my core values. It's more than just words slapped on a wall. It's something that's lived out every single day through action. It's a place where we lead with courage, we lead with kindness, we lean into the hard stuff. We ask the hard questions, we challenge the outdated systems, and speaking the truth, right? Even when it's uncomfortable. I think that's a huge, huge piece to it. It's important to me that everything is paired with empathy, respect, and a genuine intent to make things better. Not from a toxic positivity place, but a place of if we truly believe that every single person in this building, every single person in this place, wherever that place may be, deserves to belong here, right? Then we can respect each other. We can come to this table with empathy. We can come to this table respectfully. And people are the lifeblood of our work, and they should come first. So it would be truly committing to honoring the whole person, making sure that psychological safety is very, very important. Full stop. Gossiping's got to go. Shaming's got to go. Bullying's got to go. All that SHIT out the door, right? We lift as we lead. We grow ourselves. We grow other people. We celebrate wins. We give credit where credit is due. I mean, I could go on forever. I have a very long list of my values on my website, so I'm pretty clear about who I am and what I believe in. And I think, if we put people at the forefront and we get curious, I'm going to be like all Ted Lasso here, but if we get curious instead of judgmental, I think we could honestly see a lot of improvement.
I agree. And that's something that is really important to me in my leadership, is building people up instead of tearing people down.
Yeah.
Again, like the gossiping, the bullying, the mean club, I think we could do without. And if we would spend a lot more time catching people up, then we would have less to worry about.
Yeah. Ask more questions.
Yeah.
Get more curious. Instead of saying so-and-so is lazy, maybe something actually is going on in their life. Ask them how they are.
Right.
Did you even check in on them before you just assumed that it was like a problem with them, right? Like maybe it has nothing to do with them.
Right. How do we get leadership to invest in people development, not just profit and protocol?
I think the same way that we approach any other investment, right? We show what that return is. I mean, at the end of the day, there is actual data that supports what our people are bringing in. It's not just the doctors, right? I think a lot of people, there's this misnomer that doctors are the revenue drivers, so the doctors are the most important person in your clinic. That's not true. If you ask AHA, NAVTA, AVMA, there's JAVMA articles, there's hard data that shows that it's somewhere between, I say there's hard data and then I don't actually have the numbers in front of me, but there's hard data that shows it's like 63 to 90K, something like that, in yearly revenue that's increased per technician, credentialed technician, when they're fully utilized, depending on the hospital. So the lower end is probably going to be your general practice and the higher end is going to be your ER, your specialty clinic. But that's real money, right? When you are fully utilizing your technician. You show that to your CEO and your COO and the people, your finance person, right? And that's going to spark some interest. Well, how do we start utilizing our teams then? Well, you hire somebody like me who's going to help you figure out all of those pieces. But you have training, you have all of these pieces involved in making sure that you are actually investing in your people. But you just say, oh, well, people are important. That's getting you nowhere. You actually have to show them the data, and there is actual data to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and even just from the inner workings of a hospital, my doctor can, for example, write down a anesthesia plan for dental, and my technicians can then execute that, and my doctor can continue to produce.
Yeah,
we're utilizing each and every one's license and letting everyone practice at the top of their license.
Yeah, and if you go into those clinics that have historically had the doctors doing the majority, like the doctor-led clinics, right? and you go into those clinics where the doctors are doing the majority of the tech work, or nursing care, if you will, and you have the technicians that are just sort of standing around, you're not going to find a whole lot of really engaged, wanting to be there people. I'm going to venture to guess you have pretty high turnover. I'm going to venture to guess that you don't have really high morale in general, right? You go into a clinic that has people that are being utilized and people that are being pushed, and doctors that are being not just turnover for your technical staff and your support team, right? Like your technicians and your assistants and your CSRs, but also turnover for your doctors, because your doctors don't want to do all of that often.
Right.
I mean, every once in a while, like some doctors really do enjoy some of that stuff, so let them jump in and do it so they don't lose their skills. But it's the doctors that are doing it all the time. They're not able to do half the stuff, so they're not able to get their production. They're not able to get they're not able to be efficient because they're holding animals, they're taking blood, they're doing all of that work. And then they're getting burnt out because they're writing records until the wee hours of them. It's all compounded. When you actually let the people do what they're skilled to do,
Right.
everybody wins. Everybody wins.
Agreed. Do you think corporate consolidation is evolving vet med or suffocating it?
So I mentioned it before, but I think it's really important to preface this by saying that I've only ever worked in corporate veterinary medicine. I'm going to start there. I'm not here, and I will never pit private against corporate. I will never do that. I can only speak from my lived experience, right? I think it's both. And I think which side of the aisle, if you will,
Coin.
the side of the coin, right? The aisle's more government. That was wrong. Anyway, which side of the coin that you are on, I think depends entirely on how it's being done. When consolidation is done well, I think it can bring resources. I think it can bring standardized training. I think it can bring better benefits, the ability to invest in things that an independent clinic might not otherwise be able to afford. That can absolutely evolve to not so great things. But I do think that it can also help the profession raise the bar for patient care and team support, again, if it's being done with the right end goal in mind. Where it suffocates is when it becomes all about profit and efficiency at the expense of the people. When the people get forgotten in all of it, when it only becomes about how do we make more money? How do we drive more business? How do we keep pushing and not giving, or like it's all give and no take or whatever. I think I said that backwards, but like, you know what I mean? It's not mutual for the people on the front lines. It's all like, let's throw everything at them to do all of the stuff so that we can profit. When it turns into that, that's when we run into the issues. I think at its best, corporate consolidation should be about scaling what works, investing in the people and the tools, in the systems that make care better, jobs more sustainable. I stay in corporate medicine because I have the ability to have the role that I have, that I can be able to impact more teams. If I was only in one private hospital, I would only be able to impact that one hospital.
Yeah.
Right? There's people ask me a lot, like, why do you stay in corporate medicine? There's so much negative that doesn't feel like it aligns. And it's hard because there's some things that I'm like, yep, this is corporate, but I have to remember at the end of the day, because of corporate, I'm able to impact so many more people, so many more pets. And if I just stayed in one place, even if it was a larger private owned, it's still small, right? Like it's a small pond.
If a hospital refuses to elevate techs and foster psychological safety, should they still be allowed to call themselves progressives?
I would challenge anyone who honestly says that they're progressive if they aren't fostering psychological safety.
Yeah.
What is your definition of progressive if you are not allowing for new ideas? If you are only ever allowing for the ideas that are existing? Because psychological safety is when you are allowing people to feel safe to offer up those ideas and empowering them to do so. So if you are not fostering psychological safety, if you are not elevating your teams, which kind of are the same thing, right? Or at least they kind of happen congruently, then how are you progressive?
Right.
You're stagnating at that point. Like you're not, sorry, if your team's afraid to speak up, you're not evolving. You're stuck.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen hospitals like that, and it is not progressive. It's quite the opposite.
No, that to me seems performative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I would even say there's still some corporations now. We have metrics that we have to meet as leadership, and even doctors, but again, I like what you said. When it becomes more focused on that than building the team, which will then allow us to make that and meet those goals, it's not right. And I've definitely been in situations like that.
Yeah. When you take care of your people, they take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Business 101.
Right. Servant leadership. What's the most over-glorified leadership style or principle you've seen being pushed today?
Well,
And
it's
what should
interesting. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's interesting that you just said servant leadership leading into this question, because I think that I would actually answer this question as servant leadership, because not because it's a bad concept, but I think because of how often it's being applied. I don't think that I think that the way that servant leadership, like the Simon Sinek servant leadership idea, is being oversimplified to and watered down into nice leadership.
Yeah.
We're avoiding those hard conversations and letting poor behaviors slide. So that us as leaders don't have to lean into the hard stuff. We're protecting ourselves by not having to have those hard conversations, but then in reality, we erode trust, right? We think that by being nice, we're being kind, but it's actually doing the absolute opposite of what we're trying to do. I think that I would replace it with radical humility, which is the intersection of Kim Scott's radical candor and yours Koenig's radical humility. It's talking about modern servant leadership, and it's kind of this space sort of in between where you're checking your ego at the door, but you're staying curious instead of being defensive, and creating a culture where the feedback is flowing both ways. I don't know if you've read either book, but they're both really, really interesting. And when you kind of mush them together, it allows us to be willing to own it when we screw up as leaders, admit that we don't have all of the answers, and invite our teams to be part of the solution, right? To help find the answers, giving feedback both ways, saying like, help me help you, right? And then having the intent to make sure that other people grow, but also focusing on behaviors instead of thinking that it's like the person themselves. Kind of like what I was saying before, where we're saying that person is lazy, or that person is this, or that person is that. It's not it's not them, right? It's this, right? This person is late. That is the fact, right? So what do we do to fix that fact, right? And we go in and we have the conversation with them. Like maybe they don't even realize that that's a problem. Have you ever even talked to them? Like how many times have you had, I can't even tell you how many times, I don't know how many times you've had this conversation, but I can tell you how many times I've had this conversation where somebody's come to me and they're like, so and so is so annoying and they're so lazy and they never do what I ask them to do and they're always late. And I'm like, do they know that this is frustrating for you? Well, no, but and I'm like, have the conversation.
Right.
Lean into the uncomfortable. Your uncomfortable is causing them to continue to do the things that are making you uncomfortable and unhappy. And then because you're not having those conversations, because you're being nice, everybody is watching this happen and you're creating that culture.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And just another thing is just being curious.
Yeah.
And what I do is I first lean in and ask what's going on, ask, like you said, if they even know what they're doing, ask what's going on outside of work.
Yeah.
Genuinely have humility.
Yeah.
And I found that to be the most effective leadership style as well, because me personally, I am curious about what goes on, not just in hospital, but out, because that does affect your work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
And
not everybody's going to want to talk about their personal life, right? And so I think that's also
yeah,
important as leaders to set that stage, and that also builds trust, right? To say, "Hey, listen, if you don't want to talk about what's going on, that's totally fine, but is there something that I can do to help you in this situation here, because what is happening here is affecting this place," right? What you coming in 15 minutes late every day is negatively impacting in this way. So how can we fix that, right? In whatever, I'm using lateness as an example, but whatever
yeah,
the situation may be, right? And how can I help you? Is there something that I can do to help you so that we can change that? Or I don't want people to think that you're lazy. People keep coming to me and
right,
saying that you're lazy. I don't want that to keep happening. So what can I do to help you? Like, let's
right,
fix that,
right. Yeah. You've talked openly about mental health. How have you protected your peace and purpose as you rose in leadership?
Yeah, so I mentioned before that I have ADHD. I'm also diagnosed with dyslexia, anxiety, and PTSD. So protecting my peace is not optional. It is absolutely and utterly essential. I don't I don't say that lightly. When I don't manage my mental health, literally everything else falls apart. As
Mhm.
cliche as it sounds, you can't pour from an empty cup. So that's how serious I take it.
Yeah.
I fill my cup by networking with like-minded people, talking to people like you and talking to other people in vet med that believe that we can continue this amazing work that we're doing. It literally lights my fire. Going to the gym, which probably doesn't surprise you, spending time with my kids, my husband, reading, being with my dog, who is actually an ESA. So say what you will about that, but he travels with me, and there are moments where I just need to sit with him and be. Even if it's just for a minute, it helps to kind of regulate me and ground me. And so um, doing a lot of that really helps. Another big thing for me is writing. So everything that I post on social media has probably started with something that I've written in some capacity. My style of just kind of talking to the camera without a lot of big fancy edits is very intentional.
Yeah.
I don't get too fancy or polished. My podcast is also not very fancy or polished for a reason, because if I get that way, it gets very not very good for my headspace. And so
Yeah.
honestly, for me, physical health kind of blends all of it together. I go to the gym. I take care of it's really where I take care of my brain the most. training for me is about mental clarity, emotional regulation. I mean, as somebody who's not who's used to that side of the world, I'm sure that makes a lot of sense, right? It's strength, endurance, but it's also emotional regulation and being able to really expend that energy.
Yeah, for me, it's making sure that I balance my workload.
Yeah.
If a new grad technician is listening and feels undervalued, what's the one thing?
Sorry, they're talking to me.
Well, it's okay.
You can get an hour on this for now. Give me a few minutes, okay? I'm almost done. Here.
I wanted Roblox.
I'll give you Roblox when I'm done with this. Here, give it to me. It's 9 o'clock, so they get more screen time.
There you
because
go.
It's summertime. Here.
Yeah.
All right, leave me alone. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, one thing is, I really value folks like yourself who manage a family, manage a business, manage your work life. This is authentic, and
Yeah.
this is
Real
another
life.
reason why I've done this podcast in the way that I've done it as well, is to highlight real people like yourself who are conquering and just a normal person.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's really important to note, right? Like yes, my kids are on screens, but at the end of the day, right? It's real life. This is,
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Right. Let's circle back to this question. If a new grad technician is listening and feels undervalued, what's the one thing you'd want them to know today?
The one thing that I would say to a new technician who just graduated, and I love that you are asking me about a technician and not a doctor, for many, many reasons, but is that your value is not defined by the first clinic that you work in. If you are feeling undervalued, it doesn't mean that you're in the wrong career, right? It might just mean that you're in the wrong environment.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've been in clinics where I've sat outside the clinic crying before going in. I've questioned whether I should have ever gone into vet med. This is my second career, believe it or not. I know I'm young, but I have questioned whether this was the right move to make after all of the retail stuff didn't go well. Went to school a second time, and I'm in a lot of student loan debt, and I've sat outside crying saying, what the heck did I do? And at the end of the day, I knew I was meant for this in some way. And I knew I had a place here, and I know you do too. And going back to that fitness analogy from earlier, it takes reps, it takes time. You're not going to know everything right away. I came out of school and I was really lucky to get hired in oncology right away, right? That doesn't happen often. But it still took me a good year to really actually know what I was doing. And still 6 years later in oncology, I still had questions. And then I went back after managing clinics for a short time in 2023. I was between jobs and I still had the technical skills, but there were a lot of new treatments. And I was like, I don't know what in the world is happening right now. And it felt like I was back at square one in some ways. That's normal. And I think it's totally normal to feel like a fish out of water sometimes, even though you're like, I should know all of this stuff. Like, you won't know it all. It's okay. You're always going to be learning. And if your clinic or your manager isn't leading, maybe they were thrown in it too without enough learning and training to equip them with what they needed to do their job. So don't believe that all of vet med is like that. There are places that will value you, invest in you, and help you grow. And if you live in New Jersey, come check me out because I will find you a place. I'm just kidding. but really, you just have to find them, and we do exist. So Stick it out. We're here. There are plenty of us. Find your community, because I can't even tell you, like, don't run away. There's so much good in this small but very mighty community of ours.
Yeah, agreed. Last question. What's next for you, personally or professionally, that excites you right now?
Try to take over the world. Sorry, was that too much of like a Pinky in the Brain thing? Am I aging myself? No. No. Professionally, I am really excited to grow leading veterinary teams, which is my side gig. I'm excited to build it into a true hub for veterinary leaders, building a place for more tools, courses, spaces where people from all corners of vet med can really come together, build community, learn how to lead in a way that they wish that they had, not just manage. I'm also pretty deep into writing my second book. This one has been on my heart for a really long time, sort of a field guide for the multi-site leader or someone who wants to go into that role. There's not a whole lot out there for us, so figured why the heck not. Alongside that, continuing to expand my speaking and education work. I want to keep starting the conversations that sometimes make people a little uncomfortable. So if you follow me on social media, you probably see that happening quite a bit. But I think that's where the change happens. And yeah, so that's professionally. Personally, I'm focused on living the same values that I talk about at work, being curious, growing, trying to find balance in all of it. That means networking with people who inspire me, whether it be in the gym, taking care of my brain, more moments with my kids, spending time with my dog, who's my only one left. So, had a lot of death in my animal family in the last few years. So just like spending as much time with him as I can. And then, spending more time with my husband, because when you have littles, it's really hard to do that. And they're getting a little bit older now. So it does feel like maybe that's time to actually spend a little bit more time focused on us. I know it feels like a lot of things that I want to do, but that's me. I can't ever stop. So for me, what's next is not a single finish line. I think it's always going to be a long game. Building a career, building a life that just feels aligned, where everything is moving forward in a positive direction that feels worth getting up and showing up to, where my kids and I can, and my husband and my mom can all be proud of every day.
Love that. Suzanne, this conversation was everything I hoped for. Real,
and more.
bold, and full of truth that this industry does not always want to hear, but desperately needs to. From your years on the floor in oncology and emergency to now overseeing operations and coaching teams, you've never stopped advocating for people, even when it's hard. Your ability to blend performance, science, mental wellness, and a real leadership sets a new standard. And I want to personally thank you for being on this mission. For those listening, if today's episode shook something loose in you, whether you're a technician, a leader, or just someone figuring out your path, go follow Suzanne and let her work remind you of what's possible. This has been Athletic Conceptual Training, and today we've learned that the strongest leaders aren't always the loudest. They're the ones willing to go first, speak up, and leave the door open for those behind them. Until next time, train your mind, guard your culture, and lead with purpose. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.